Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 10 of the anime series, Toaru Hikuushi no Koiuta. And this episode opened with a hell of a revelation to do with Ignacio. And I almost have to wonder who plotted this series, because I would have loved to have known what we find out about him when we first see the reveal of his character, and he's just sort of relegated to the background. We just don't know anything about him. And I think it would have made everything a lot more dramatic if we knew there was something threatening, something ominous to do with his past. As we see in this episode, we find out that his family was one that suffered grave poverty, but only after apparently his mother, who served as the concubine to the emperor of, I'm assuming, the Lahir kingdom. You know, essentially what that amounts to is Kal-El's, or Karl Lahir's father, the king, apparently was getting with this broad, who is Ignacio's mother, when he was a young child, and they were suffering for it when the revolution was beginning against their kingdom that led to this democracy that, you know, stands as it is now, which is why Kal-El has all of that just spurning hatred for, you know, Nina Viento and all that kind of stuff. When this was just on the horizon, his family was kicked out of the kingdom. Nobody knew they existed. Nobody cared about them. And essentially, he and his mother were left fending for themselves. Now, you know, they didn't have money. They had nowhere to live. And as Ignacio relates, very heartbreakingly, but it's something that unfortunately happens even in our real world all too often, his mother had to go out and sort of prostitute herself to be able to allow their family to get food and survive. And so this is why Ignacio has such a strong, you know, spurning hatred, much to match Kal-El's for Nina Viento, you know, for Kal-El, for Karl Lahir, the son, the progeny of this fallen kingdom. And seeing Ignacio just handing Kal-El his ass, because he's been sad sacking it ever since figuring out that Claire Cruz, his love interest, is Nina Viento, the focal point of all his hate and madness and all this stuff. So, I mean, this series had just ramped up everything to paramount proportions, and this all coincides with yet another oncoming wave of the Sky Clan attacks, because the majority of their troops are taking on the enemy in other places. They have an observation plane that is trying to get in close to the enemy warships, and they're just undermanned. They have to once again pass down the order to rely on the student pilots. And you have the two teachers trying to stop it, one of them trying to stop the planes, the other one's ripping off her, military sort of tag and saying, that's it, I quit. I will not order my students forevermore to go into battle. In fact, as a human being, as somebody who's not part of the military, I'm telling you students, get on the escape buses, get out of Dodge, you know, just get out of town, don't go and fight, don't lose your lives. The government doesn't care about how many of you don't come back. We do, and so it's a very sort of weighty situation, and most of the students we find, they don't want to die. It's not a matter of them not having loyalty or honor. It's about, you know, realizing we're not equipped for this. We're not ready for this. We haven't, even begun to learn how to pilot and learn these skills that even the best of our forces, they're getting their asses handed to them. What are we hoping to accomplish if we get in the planes and start trying to guard this observation plane and all this stuff? But you have four characters who are ready. They've considered all the options. They're ready to actually go and meet the enemy head on. And that is, of course, Kal-El, Ignacio, who is going to partner up with him since Ariel, his sister, has to be left behind, and very surprisingly, a couple more of the background characters that we really haven't focused on a lot. Noriaki and Benji. It's very interesting to me because, of course, with Benji and his sort of, girlfriend Sharon, I don't know why. I'm sure they must have mentioned that they grew up together early in the series or something like that, but I kind of took them for being siblings. So when she actually leans up and tries to kiss him and says, come back to me and everything, I was kind of like, huh? Because I wasn't that clear on their relationship. But they're both going to go. With Noriaki, it's much more personal because he feels guilty for the ribbing, he passed toward Mitty, who, of course, went out in a blaze of glory, saving one of their fellow classmates and everything, and he wants to follow in the footsteps of Mitty. And it's very intriguing how this kind of comes back to aid him at a critical moment once they're taking on enemy fighters, and he's scared out of his mind, and he just wants to run away, yet Mitty didn't. And he keeps challenging himself that I can't be like Mitty. But Mitty seems to, whether it's a hallucination or whether it's his own experience or whether it's actually something from beyond this mortal coil, Mitty tells him, we're very much the same. If you believe, you'll have the power that I did, and you can win the day. And so we basically leave off with the cliffhanger of Noriaki and Benji's plane heading in toward that enemy, sort of stronghold, which has a big smoke screen that they've unveiled so that the hero fighters cannot see them and will, completely be hidden from any assault by our heroes. And with, of course, Kal-El and Ignacio following shortly thereafter. And we've seen just how badass Ignacio is. He's got this giant sort of super sniper rifle, and he's taken out plane after plane after plane. Kal-El is speechless with this cat's skills, and so, what a hell of a way to leave this episode off with a cliffhanger, leaving me chomping at the bit for the next episode, of course. And yeah, otherwise that'll be pretty much it for me on this. I hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.